receiving any type of gratuity or gift from a foreign power. So this is a constitutional prohibition that he has to comply with. The first thing he'll do on January the 20th is take the oath of office to uphold the Constitution of the United States. So I'm going to wait to see how he's going to separate himself. The way that previous presidents have done this is through a blind trust or selling the assets. That's been proven to be a way that you can insulate yourself from any contact with your business or the trustees having any contact with the president. So let's see what he's doing.
Senator Ben Cardin. Well, let's see if we can get some clarity on this. Live to Washington to speak to constitutional law professor Jonathan Turley. Welcome to you, Jonathan Turley. I mean, where does Donald Trump stand legally? He says he's not obliged to hand over his business interests.
Well, he's right in terms of federal law on conflicts of interest. I've been a critic of that law for about 2 decades because it exempts not just the president, the vice president, the judiciary, but also members of Congress. And many of us believe that that's a mistake, that they should all be subject to it. The people that President Trump appoints to the executive branch, they have to comply with that law. They tend to put their assets into blind trust, but the president's exempted. But that does not mean that he's exempted from the Emoluments Clause, which was an early anti-bribery provision that the framers embraced. They were worried that foreign governments would bribe presidents, seek to curry their favor, which was a very big problem back then. And so they put it in the Constitution. It covers any type of benefit or advantage or gift or present that a president might be given. Even when President Tyler was given 2 horses way back when, the Congress made him auction the horses off and give the proceeds to the Treasury.
Right. What do we think, then, is the most likely, the most sensible option for Donald Trump, then? Because, I mean, if he's going to go back to running a business after he is president, presumably he's going to want that business to remain in a very healthy state. And he can't be seen as completely neutral unless, presumably, he lets go of it completely.
Well, this is going to be a difficult needle to thread. He has a very specific family business. It's a legitimate family business. He raised his kids to take it over for him. It has his name on it. But it's also not a business of liquid assets. In the past, presidents have had liquid assets. They've had stocks and money market accounts. Those things can be easily moved into a blind trust. For the Trump Corporation, you can't do that. These are fixed buildings, fixed assets. He'd have to sell huge amounts of property to liquidate those assets. So it's a very difficult thing for him to do in terms of a blind trust. The best thing for him to do is to completely separate himself from the business, put whatever proceeds he receives into a blind trust, and to take steps to make sure that he isn't brought into consultation over business interests. He already tripped that wire after the election by raising one of his properties with an individual who's visiting with him. The duty of the White House counsel is going to have to be very careful to watch that wall of separation between Trump and his assets.
So perception as well as the actual legality of the situation is all important. I mean, the fact that the blind trust might involve his children, surely that's a problem. If his children are part of that transition team advising him right now, they have access to the presidency.
They do. The mere fact, however, that your family is advising you does not necessarily trip the wire. First of all, the Trump people can cite to the Clinton precedent. You know, Bill Clinton appointed Hillary Clinton to be the head of the health care task force, where a court said that pretty much was a government job and might have violated another statute, the nepotism statute. But the court said because she wasn't being paid, she could fall into this type of exception. The Trump children could do the same, not receive money, but advise their father. There also have been past presidents that have had what's called a kitchen cabinet. They're often business people who have no official position in government. Obviously, they have interests in the government, but they've been allowed to advise the president. So it gets very, very messy. The concerns are real. And so we have to try to find practical resolutions. I think it's a good thing that he's saying that he's going to take these steps of separation. But the devil's in the details here.
And we shall find out more, we hope, on the 15th of December. Thank you very much, Professor Jonathan Turley, joining us from Washington. Well, meanwhile, the former Goldman Sachs executive Steven Mnuchin has confirmed he will be the next Treasury Secretary. Mr. Mnuchin was Mr. Trump's campaign finance director. And billionaire investor Wilbur Ross, who made his fortune restructuring companies, will be the next Commerce Secretary. So far, Mr. Trump has appointed 4 millionaires and 3 billionaires to his cabinet. Now, the head of the CIA says he believes it would be disastrous if Donald Trump sticks to many of his current foreign policy plans. Speaking exclusively to the BBC, John Brennan says he should be very wary of Russia and avoid scrapping President Obama's nuclear deal with Iran. He's been speaking to our security correspondent, Gordon Carrera.
He is the man charged with keeping America's secrets and fighting its covert wars around the world. With a new president soon to take office, the director of the CIA spoke to me about the challenges ahead, and events unfolding in Syria were uppermost in his mind.
Well, first of all, the situation in Syria is heartbreaking. What is happening to Syrian citizens, particularly those in Aleppo, that have been the target of relentless pounding by air as well as by artillery, and the wanton slaughter of civilians that both the Syrians and the Russians are responsible for, is nothing short of outrageous.
But it must be quite frustrating to watch what's happening in Aleppo.
Very frustrating.
And know that there's not much, it appears, that the United States can do about it.
Very frustrating.
The president-elect has suggested he wants to engage with Russia more, to cooperate rather than confront. Do you think that's possible?
Russia is a country that will pursue its national interests frequently to the detriment of the interests of the peoples of the countries wherein it operates. So I think President-elect Trump and the new administration need to be wary of Russian promises.
President-elect Trump has also suggested he might bring back the practice of waterboarding detainees. Another mistake, John Brennan says.
Without a doubt, the CIA really took some body blows as a result of its experiences in the detention interrogation program, and some that were very, very damaging to our reputation as well as to our officers. I think the overwhelming majority of CIA officers would not want to get back into that business.
The director's concerns include the new administration scrapping the nuclear deal with Iran, using loose language over terrorism, as well as the ways it might deploy the CIA itself.
What will you be saying to them when it comes to sitting down and saying, here's the range of covert actions, here's the range of hugely powerful capabilities that are vested in the hands of the CIA?
I want to make sure that they understand what the authorities are the CIA has, what the capabilities are, what programs we might have underway in different parts of the world, so that they are as informed as possible of the facts. I think there are a lot of people out there who read the papers and listen to news broadcasts where the facts may be a bit, off. And so I want to make sure the new team understands what the reality is.
And are you confident from what you've seen so far about which direction they'll take?
I'm confident that I will have the opportunity to express my views to them. It will be up to them. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know.
Gordon Carrera, BBC News, Washington.
The outgoing CIA director, John Brennan. Now, as bombs drop from the air and government forces make gains in the rebel-held east of Aleppo, the past few days are reported to have been some of the very worst of the Syrian civil war. The already dire humanitarian situation there continues to deteriorate as thousands attempt to escape the fighting. Our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette, is in Syria. She told us about the regime's gains in Aleppo.
Well, they've certainly had a stunning advance in recent days, taking more than 40% of the rebel-held enclave in the east and bisecting the rebel-held ground into two, which will make it increasingly difficult for the fighters to operate and, as importantly, for the international community to try to help the people living in besieged conditions in those areas. But we have to be very cautious in predicting what the advance from here on will be. We have heard reports that the rebel fighters retreated further south to regroup, to consolidate their forces, to establish a new front line. The question will be as to whether or not they can actually get more supplies in and keep those supply lines running when it's very difficult for them to get those supplies across the Turkish border to the north. But we're still expecting the worst of the fighting to come in the southern part of their eastern enclave, which means that the worst of this humanitarian crisis is still to unfold. The International Committee of the Red Cross told us today that the people arriving in government-held West Aleppo are in absolutely desperate conditions. They're running, they're fleeing for their lives under gunfire. They've lived in a situation of siege for many months, so some are injured, some are needing medical help, some are very weak. They've been living with hunger, and then they're heading to a very unknown future, and there isn't enough resources in place in the West to take in this huge tide of people, and the tide is by no means over.
These to set in Damascus. Well, it can be incredibly difficult to speak directly to people inside Aleppo, but two men who have witnessed Syria's war from within have been talking to the BBC. Here's what they have had to say.
I'm married with 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, and I'm quite afraid for my family. Every day you have dozens of people are dying. That's continuously, daily. I might die just now while speaking to you.
Nothing to eat, nothing to drink.
No food, no fuel, no medicine.
Right now, no electricity. People just sleep in the darkness and wake up at the voice of the aircrafts, at the voice of the bomb, at the voice of missiles.
Bombing and targeting people and civilians are continuous, non-stop, and 24 hours.
This is a shame on the world, because it is 2016 and people get burned to death and suffocated to death and starving to death. That's the situation in Aleppo.
Two voices from inside Aleppo. I look now at some of the day's other news. OPEC countries meeting in Vienna say they've reached a deal to limit production and boost prices. Production will be cut by 1.2 million barrels a day from the start of January. The president of OPEC said key non-OPEC countries like Russia were also party to the agreement. The UN Security Council has further tightened sanctions on North Korea in response to its continued testing of nuclear weapons. The new measures aim to reduce the country's coal exports by 60%, denting Pyongyang's export earnings by around $800 million. North Korea's been under UN sanctions since 2006 over its nuclear and missile tests. 14 police forces here in the UK say they're investigating allegations of historical child sexual abuse in football. Chelsea Football Club has asked lawyers to investigate an employee who worked for them in the 70s and has since died. They say relevant information will be passed to the Football Association. Tens of thousands of supporters of the Brazilian football club Chapecoense have been holding a vigil to remember their players who were killed in a plane crash in Colombia. There are reports that the pilot of the aircraft radioed for help to say that the plane had run out of fuel and was in electrical failure. The flight went down near the city of Medellin. From there, Aleem Makboul reports.
A stadium that's now lost all its stars. The very place where over recent seasons they've watched the stunning rise of their sporting idols has now become the focus again as they mourn for them. The news for so many has been devastating, but they're doing what they can to come to terms with it all. Below the stands, a desolate, silent dressing room. The newspapers talk of a community coming together in the face of tragedy. Today, there's no ball in play, this one says. There's no live broadcast. The stadium has no colour. Today, we're all one. I spoke to Adriano yesterday, right before boarding, says Eliandra Vea, whose late husband was the team's head of security. Around 4 o'clock, my friend woke me on the phone, shouting, "The plane crashed, the plane crashed." I said, "Stop being crazy. What are you talking about? It can't be." Danilo, the team goalkeeper, managed to call his wife after the crash, but died soon after of his injuries. Those players who didn't travel with the team are bereft.
I have 3 kids. It's hard to think, what if I were there in that plane, and what if I wasn't there? It's tough. There is too much in my head right now. maybe in a few days I can think about it. It's just very sad.
British investigators are flying out to Colombia to help the national authorities find what caused the crash. The Air Accident Investigation Bureau said it was following standard international protocol by sending a team as the aircraft that came down was built in Britain.
Because there was no fire involved, the bodies are in relatively good condition, so the identification should be fast. We should complete the process within 2 days.
Well, that fact that the plane didn't burst into flames on crashing is leading to swirling speculation that it ran out of fuel while it was being told to wait to land. But there are also reports that the pilot had reported an electrical fault. Back in southern Brazil, some today have been trying to find solace just by being in the place where the spirit of their heroes will now live on. Alim Makboul, BBC News in Medellin.
Thousands of Cubans have lined the streets of Havana as Fidel Castro's remains began their 800-kilometre journey from the capital to their final resting place in Santiago de Cuba. His ashes are being carried in a small cedar box draped in the Cuban flag. They're being towed behind a military jeep for what's expected to be a 4-day procession. The route will retrace in reverse the journey taken by Fidel Castro when he seized power in 1959. His ashes will be interred on Sunday. Large crowds continue to pay tribute to the revolutionary leader.
We are not saying goodbye. We have him here. He will never leave our side. Always firm and handing the baton to Raúl so that everything turns out well.
In reality, I did not know whether to cry or tremble, but I did both, because knowing that this great personality leaves us in a box is hard, very hard. This is going to be in our lives forever, and we have cried, we have done everything. But we know that what we must do today is work, to honour him day after day.
A new vaccine against HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, is being tested in South Africa. It's the largest and most advanced clinical trial ever to take place there. The United States National Institute of Health, which is funding the trial, says it hopes this will be the final nail in the coffin for HIV. From Cape Town, Nomsa Maseko reports.
The most ambitious HIV vaccine trial is underway in South Africa. On the eve of World AIDS Day, scientists say this will be the largest clinical trial to be launched in a country where an estimated 1,000 people contract HIV every day. If successful, this trial could lead to the licensing of the world's first HIV vaccine.
It's hugely significant because we've been looking for an HIV preventive vaccine for 30 years and, it's evaded us. Quite a few years ago, a vaccine trial was run in Thailand. 16,000 people volunteered for that study, and we found a modest but highly significant vaccine efficacy of 30%. It was the first time we had any indication that a vaccine could actually prevent against HIV infection. We've taken that concept and we've built on it. We believe that we've got a better deal now, and so the next few years will teach us whether we actually have a stronger and more durable vaccine, and that's huge for the HIV field.
The study, called HVTN 702, aims to enroll 5,400 sexually active HIV-negative men and women across the country. Awetu Benenengu is one of the participants in the trial.
I decided to get involved because I don't like the way my HIV-positive cousin is being treated. There is so much stigma. I want to be part of the generation that changed this.
Scientists are hoping for a 50% plus success rate in South Africa, where close to 7 million people are living with the virus. Results of the vaccine study are expected to be released in 4 years' time. Nomsa Maseko, BBC News, Cape Town.
The man who injured 11 people in an attack at Ohio State University may have had links to so-called Islamic State. Abdul Razak Ali Artan drove his car into a crowd and slashed several people with a knife before he was shot dead by a police officer. The FBI says it's investigating if he'd been inspired by the late Al-Qaeda-linked cleric Anwar al-Awlaki, who was killed by an airstrike in 2011. A transgender actor in Turkey is using her art to tackle prejudice. Turkey has the highest murder rate of trans people in Europe. As part of the BBC's 100 Women season, we've been talking to Seyhan Arman in Istanbul, where she's risking her life to take a stand.
Belki de böyle dimdik ayaklarımızın üzerinde durmamız rahatsız ediyordur diğerlerini. Yoksa durduk yere kim kimden bu kadar nefret eder ki? Saçlarımı uzatmam, memelerime ameliyatla poşet içerisinde serum koydurmam neden rahatsız eder bir başkasını?
Tamam Seyhan'cığım, burayı baştan alalım. Şu son kısım var ya, memelerini tuttuğun kısım. Orada şey gibi düşün, yani bunu bir ister istemez suçludan rahatsız ol.
Okey. Şimdi Hande Kader protestosunu gerçekleştirdiğimiz Taksim Tünel Meydanı'na geldik. Hande Kader öldürüldü. Üstelik de yakılarak öldürüldü arkadaşımız.
Çekiyorsunuz ama yayınlamıyorsunuz. Hiçbir yerde yayınlamıyorsunuz. Bunları yayınlayacağız. Bütün dünya görecek, tamam mı? Bize bakacak.
Öldürülüş şekli hepimizde bir öfkeye sebep oldu ve o öfke patlamasının sebebi burada bir protesto gerçekleştirdik. Şimdi bu makyaj Seyhan'ı Matmazel Coco'ya çevirmenin makyajı. Matmazel Coco benim son 4-5 yıldır oynadığım bir karakter. Drag Queen performansı yaptığım alanlarda canlandırdığım bir karakter. Genel olarak ülkenin gidişatından bir takım endişelerimiz var sonuç itibariyle. Yani sıra bize gelebilir mi? Tabii ki sıra bize gelecek bir şekilde. Sonuç olarak egemen sayılan ideolojinin karşısındayız. Bir tercih ya da bu böyle ne yapayım aman bari travesti olayım, transseksüel olayım diye düşünülmüş bir şey değil. Öyle ya da böyle translar varlar, var olmaya da devam edecekler.
Now, cinema goers in India will have to wait before they can sit back with their popcorn and relax into their chosen movie. The Supreme Court has ruled that the national anthem must be played in every cinema before the film is screened. This is how it's done at the moment in some venues. Audience will have to get out of their seat as a mark of respect. The court said people should stop following individual notions of freedom and should have a sense of patriotism. So in around 10 days' time, all cinemas will have to do the same all the way across India. Don't forget, you can get in touch with me about any of the stories on Twitter. I'm at Karin BBC. That is it from the programme. The weather's coming next. But for now, from me, Karin Giannoni, and the rest of the team, goodbye.